Okay, this is the third uh, part of my commentary on the magic pill, and this time I'm going to talk about uh, the theme of colonization that the magic pill, the documentary raises. I think it's really well handled, and it leads. It's a good jumping off point for my thoughts. Making public my thoughts on a big issue. So here's the issue. We'll talk about the film after I finish this, and and then we'll expand on. Uh, I'm going to expand on what was in the film, what the film presented. So first of all, some pretty obvious claims, but they're important to keep in mind. Um, humans are the human species is extraordinarily consequential. That is, we happen to be living at a time on the in the history of the Earth when biodiversity is probably greater than it's ever been before. And we are, at the moment, responsible for a mass extinction. So we are incredibly consequential. But we also have the ability to reverse that and to create the conditions in which biodiversity, life propagates, accelerates. Um, Life wants to create more life. Life wants to diversify, wants to biodiverse, wants to become more biodiverse. We know how to create the conditions in which that can happen. So life makes more life. But at the actual at the moment, we're doing exactly the opposite. So here's my claim: that is, the world is going in. Humans are going in two directions, and the world is going with us. We're going in one direction. That'll be the direction of that we're used to, and that is corporate, industrial, governmental control, imperialism, colonization, dependency of all people and all groups of people on one uh, on leaders that consolidate and make everyone dependent on the system. That's that way now. The other way, there is an awful lot of energy right now, and I'm going to make this case as we go, for the opposite, for regeneration. So here we've got imperialism or colonization, let's call it imperialism, and this side, regeneration. This is, on this side, the core of, of imperialism is uh, monocrops of annual grains, so from the food system, but it's much broader than this. But monocrops of annual grains, oil seeds, uh, polyunsaturated fats, sugars. Okay, that's on this side. On the other side, we have regeneration. Don't forget all that. We've already discussed that. That kills the soil. That leads to the mass extinction we're in the middle of. It destroys waterways and it destroys habitats, ecosystems. On the other side, we have regeneration. Regeneration of the soil, regeneration of uh, life, that is more diversity, not just uh, ending a mass extinction, but allowing life to continue to evolve and diversify. That's on this side. Regeneration. Imperialism, regeneration of the soil, regeneration of the waterways, and I'm going to show that I'm not going to just use the word leader to talk about the leaders on this side that have government subsidies behind them. I'm going to talk about that in the next part. Uh, Government subsidies and that have the power of the military behind them. There's all kinds of power on this side. There's no question. That's why they're actually at the moment succeeding in destroying the world. But on the other side, there are a lot of individuals and a lot of groups, a lot of organizations, and even people couched in government that are in state operations that know that regeneration is the only way forward. Okay, so colonization in the film, it's really nicely handled, and it's propelled. We're going to talk. I'll talk a little bit later as I get into this uh, about a few Native Americans, that is, indigenous First Nations Americans that were here when Europeans arrived. And okay, But first we'll go to Australia, and that's the main group that the documentary follows. It's very interesting. I'm just going to pull out from it what I thought was most interesting. The people are called the Yunga. Yunga, but they were new to me. I didn't know, but they live in the very north coast of Australia, and they've only been really assimilated into this capitalist empire world system in the last couple of generations. So it follows a few of the people. So most of the voices, the actual information comes from the Yonga themselves, and from a few people, the filmmakers, as well as uh, uh, some other white Australians who um, uh, are initiating a retreat. Now the group is called, I think, Hope for Health, and the two people are Dr. It's Dr. Trudgen, I think is her name, and her husband. As I understand it, he had been involved in an expedition back in 1948 to the same area, in which there was a, a documentary, I think, was made of these people, of these tribes that lived, and their lifestyle. And what they had found in 1948 was that these people were extremely healthy, big bones, strong. They lived on the land. They were hunter-gatherers. They lived on the ocean. They survived on seafood and fishing in the ocean, as well as uh, whatever the plants, by gathering plants and roots and things like that. One of the people in the group tells us, one of the descendants of those people tells us that her grandfather was was absolutely exceptional in his knowledge of the local foods, and he introduces a word. She introduces a word that he used, which means in their language not to be inedible. So maybe I'll use that as I carry on. Inedible foods, because I think that's what we're all eating. Newton, don't bark. My dog's checking who's walking by. Now, so the group of people, we all sit around and talk. What's interesting? Okay, well, we'll see if you feel it's interesting. They're all suffering. These people are in their 50s and 60s, maybe a little older, I don't know, but they're obviously, and they just tell us what terrible condition they're in, health-wise. They are all suffering from the diseases of civilization, non-communicable diseases, diabetes, obesity. That's very clear from looking at them. They don't move well, cancers, heart disease, etc. Um, uh, Now they've agreed to go on a retreat for a period of time to live on their ancestral lands, and to live as their ancestors, which is they're only two generations removed from this. So they live as their ancestors, as their grandparents lived back in the early 20th century. And so we follow their health as they do that. It seems that they tell us that they're improving, that they feel better. But one of the key things is, one of the key markers is psychological. That this reverses this reverses colonization for them. Here they have white Australians telling them that, or trying to demonstrate scientifically through nutritional science and etc., that their ancestral ways of living were far superior than the culture and the economy that they have been assimilated into. And they uh, and we hear from the Yonga themselves that they have been so convinced that whatever comes from the white culture is superior to their own. This is just a colonial mindset that they have, and they tell us that they believe that they're doing right by feeding their children Coca-Cola and donuts or potato chips for breakfast, because that comes from the white store, from the colonizer's store, and that's what you're supposed to do. Now here they have white Australians saying, "Oh, that food is inedible." To use your own words, to use the words of your ancestors. You're eating inedible foods that are making you sick. And they come to see, so this is a great liberation. It's a psychological liberation for those people. But and here's what I want the point I want to make before I carry on. I think that it's not just the colonized people. I mean, we have certain categories of indigenous, and you're colonized. You have a status as, you know, indigenous, and therefore, you have certain rights because of that. We've all been colonized. These white Dr. Trudgen and her husband explain, as do all the as do many of us, and I'm going to get to this in a minute, that we've all been colonized, and the issue that faces humanity is that we have to reverse that colonization, reverse imperialism, and in doing so, we reverse all of the ills, not just nutritional, and it's not just about what we eat. That's only part of all of the damage we're doing to the planet. So that's we'll leave that part now and back in Australia. Fascinating uh, part of the documentary. So there we have on this side we have the the uh, chemical companies, really, Monsanto, DuPont, Cargill, Syngenta, that have now control of agriculture and all of the food processing, the inedible food processing uh, uh, corporations, transnational corporations. This isn't just within uh, one country. This is a transnational empire that's been built, and food is at the basis of it. They're taking over land everywhere, and they're turning it into cropland. They're turning it into lands for monocultures of annual grains and oilseeds. Um, Now, they do that in cooperation. This is one group of leaders on this side, or this is the interests on this side, that, and we've already seen how that destroys the land. Okay, I'm not going to get into that again, but that's destroying biodiversity. It's killing all the soil. There is no more. It's turning this on this side is dirt, dirt. That means life, soil without life. On this side is soil with biology. Okay, you're going in one direction or the other. Um, so but these are working in conjunction with powers in government, the military, uh, uh, in the United States, the State Department, in USAID, the Department of Agriculture, and the enormous subsidies, $20 billion a year, approximately, almost all of it going to corn, wheat, soybean, um, a couple of others, but grains. But grains. That's where the money's going. That's where the government is supporting. None of this business about how the government is supporting meat and dairy. The government is supporting grains. And it's part of an imperial project because it's making the world dependent on this group controlled by the government, supported by the government. And we talk about supported by the government, we'll look at that in a minute here, just how deeply the support goes. That's on this side. On the other side, we have some amazing initiatives. Let's we'll talk about a few of them in a minute, but these are entirely different ways of thinking and about ways of approaching the planet, approaching um, our our food system. Now, when we get back to the okay, we'll talk on this side here again about some initiatives. Let's look at the natives again. Natives in North America, the Plains Indians. Uh, Natives who lived on the Great Plains of the United States, the prairies in Canada. So this stretches all. This is the core of the heartland of North America. Uh, let's go back to about 150 years ago. Back, I think I'll get my dates wrong. I'm not worried about that right now, but I think 1951, something like that. A Fort Laramie Treaty gave tribes of natives, Plains Indians, the uh, the right to hunt buffalo as long as buffalo existed, as long as the bison existed. The government didn't say that it had every intention, though, of destroying the buffalo, of killing off all the buffalo, all the bison. Now, remember that for many thousands of years, there'd been the grasslands on the prairies, and the bison had worked along with the lions who used to live here. I mean, up until 12,000 years ago, and wolves, of course, and humans. These were the the big organisms, but they got to go right down to understand that the microbes and the bacteria were equally important in this soil food web, food web ecosystem that was the prairies, one of the most diverse on the planet, as other savannas around the world were. So, within a couple of decades, after many thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, something like 30 to 60 million bison that had been living there are killed down to 100. Okay, so you have to destroy. Yeah, that's the key to imperialism. Imperialism means you make everyone dependent on you. You might make everyone dependent on the market, then you control the market. These people, the natives, Plains Indians, wanted, lost their livelihood when they lost their ecosystems, they lost their habitat, when they lost bison. And those bisons, the prairies were turned into monocrops of annual grains, and with technology, certain kind of technology, pesticides, all the biocides, they have deteriorated the soil, the water systems, and left absolutely no future possible. And this is all connected, of course, to the oil industry that creates fertilizers and that ships these things around the world. Recently, over the last, this is going on over the last decade, every year there's a bit more, both in Canada and the United States, bison native peoples, the Dakota, the Sioux, Assiniboine peoples, the Blackfoot, are winning battles to have the descendants of those bison brought back to their reserves and their reservations. Fascinating story, and you can even start to see how, if you connect it up, some of these reserves are large and reservations in the United States, reserves in Canada, different semantics. That's all, different words. But some of them are quite large, and you can imagine how they could be connected together, and these bison could start to roam again and regenerate the land. So regeneration is the word for this discussion. So that's one aspect, and there are others in Illinois. There are conservationists who have reintroduced the original grasses, the perennial grasses, to try to bring back the grasslands. But it wasn't working because it didn't work unless you put the bison there. They introduced the bison. The bison graze on the grass. As long as they kept moving, they don't graze too far. The grass regenerate. The grasses regenerate, the perennial grasses, the roots go down and down and down. Sequester carbon, it's all about sequestering carbon. Grasses grow, so even here in Illinois we have the same kind of, now from conservationists, and with government support, state support, they are regenerating the land. There are initiatives to create a corridor from Canada down to the United States to allow the monarchs, which is a corridor that it would be free of the pesticides that are killing monarch butterflies, that would allow, and where milkweed can grow, that would allow monarch butterflies to continue to migrate from Canada and the east coast of the United States and the prairies all the way down to Mexico, where they overwinter. So there are all kinds of initiatives going on. Now let's talk about one in particular that I find really fascinating, that I find really hopeful, or what can I say? Consequential on this side, that is on the side of regeneration. So this comes out of the Savory Institute, and it's called land to market. So this is a really, really interesting initiative, and I've been thinking for a while, why doesn't someone do this? And here they are doing it. Okay, I'm back. Had something to eat. Now I'm back. I'm going to talk about one of the initiatives, because I think it's one of the really the state of the art in the initiatives on this side, that is regeneration side. So listen, there are all kinds of people who could be listening to this. Probably as many as 10 or 12 people. Some of you may be on this side. You won't understand what I'm talking about. Some of you are on this side, and you already know all about it. But the two people who are in the middle here might just be interested in understanding what's going on over here, regeneration-wise, not imperialist colonization-wise. Death over here, life over here. Mass extinction on this side, biodiversity on this side. Dirt, soil. Okay, so land to market, land to market. It comes out of the Savory Institute. It's what I've been thinking. I was thinking for a while. Why doesn't someone do this? You know, and here they've done it. It exists. So really impressed, really happy. Land to market certification. This is a certification like organic. You know how you can buy things that are organically certified and biodynamic and fair trade and all these things. Land to market certification is different in that it measures outcomes rather than practices. It doesn't say, like organic just says you can be certified organic if you don't use these pesticides. There are some exceptions and all that, but in any case won't get into that for the moment. Land to market looks at the actual um, indicators that demonstrate the land health and performance. They call them ecological outcome verification. Ecological outcome verification. So, it gives you all kinds of leeway to. Oh, just a sec, my dog. Okay, okay, come on out. Now stop. There's a dog in the laneway. Um, um, Newton, Newton, don't bark. No, don't bark. I'm busy. He'll stop. Okay. It looks at all kinds of indicators that demonstrate the land health and performance. Okay, I think I said that already. Where was I? Um, so it measures. I know what I was saying. It gives all kinds of leeway to people for individuals, groups, people who have responsibility for the land that they that they have, the habitats that they're living in, to find out what works best. So how does that work? It measures things like soil health, water retention and infiltration, biodiversity, and ecosystem function. Those are the four main things that it talks about. But imagine that it's looking at not only the progress over time of, and because we're beginning this, we are now in a moment of a degeneration. We have destroyed the soil. We are in the middle of a mass extinction. That's on this side. And land to market says, now how do we rebuild it? How do we regenerate this? So, 1,000 years ago, this wouldn't have been a question, because we would have been, humans and every other species on the planet would have been would have been living in the context of a diversification of species, a regeneration, not just a regeneration. That wouldn't have been used. It would have been just the development of soil, more life in the soil, more species being created, etc., etc. All of that has been reversed because of people who have government, corporate control of our lives and of the planet. And we're going this way to death. Okay? So on this side, we have land to market certification. How do you just measure? One thing you can do is just measure within every ecosystem, in every habitat, what are the markers. So they have a couple of dozen markers of, data points that give an ecological health index, they call it. It's fine, for every piece of land, and that's measured, that's measured against not just a progression over time. That is, we're regenerating the land, we're purifying the water, we're increasing biodiversity and all those things, but it measures it in relation to the best practices, the best outcomes in that region, eco-region. Because, there are things you have to do it that way because there are things you can't control for. Droughts and floods and all kinds of things. So it's a very interesting, it's a brilliant way of it's this way, okay? It's towards life, towards biodiversity, towards soil health, water retention and infiltration rates, that is water purity, and ecosystem function, making a habitat, not just for humans, but for all of the food web, all of the biological web that supports humans, that humans are part of. Humans are part of that system. So anyway, this is a really great initiative. Um, uh, so what happens if you go into a store and you see, you can see different certifications? I don't get the one I want. I want to know. I want what I'm buying not just to be healthy for me, which, but to be healthy for the earth. And most certifications don't do that. This certification does both things. Okay. Uh, Now let's see what else. Maybe that's it. Um, hey. Okay. Okay. Anyway, uh, I think in the next Newton, don't bark. Okay, please. Newton. Newton. Hey, Newton. Okay. Neighbor's coming home. He just wants to say hello. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave this part three here, and but now the next time I'm going to talk more directly, and I'm going to look at how power works in this world. Who are the two leaders? And going this way, government subsidies. What are those subsidies that I'm talking about? Where do they come from? What is that? How are they related to empire? And on this direction, I'm going to talk some more about all the initiatives: polycultures, permaculture, biodynamic, regenerative agriculture, four for 1,000. All of these initiatives that are leading in the direction that I think we need to go in, and that I'm not alone. Fortunately, I mean all these people, all these groups have come and are doing all kinds of things long before me. So, and the next time, and then we'll look at my own little humble garden, which is fascinating. Okay, until next time. Where's that fucking thing?